Welcome to the Restless Creatives podcast. Comfortable chats with inspirational creatives. Hosted by three self-confessed restless creatives, Lucy Hunter, Fiona Pickles and Bridget Girling. This week we chat with handmade papermaker and letterpress printer Phylecia Sutherland. Phylecia explains how she knew she must follow her creative dream, but how hard that can be when you have life to juggle too. She describes the joy and precision of a deckled edge, and she also touches on an early interest in the slightly macabre. It's safe to say she's an all-round fascinating creative.
Hello.
Oh.
Hey. You all okay?
Yeah, how are you? Looking
I'm very good.
glamorous.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful backdrop.
I know.
Oh. Yeah, I had to find the least messiest spot in the studio. That looks really messy. That looks messy. Anyway, this looks nice and neat. It's always neat on this side.
It's like us before, isn't it? We're all sort of push everything to the sides, clear a space.
I've got stuff all over the floor.
Yep.
Anyway, before we go any further, let me introduce you to Bridget with the dungarees on. I'm not sure if she's top or bottom for you.
Top.
And Lucy from you down at the bottom.
Hello.
And it is Phylecia, isn't it? I've always
Yeah, that's
called you
right.
Phylecia.
It is Phylecia, yeah.
Yeah.
But so many people pronounce it differently that I've just stopped correcting people.
So what do some people say?
Well, I get someone called me Phylecia the other day. I don't really know. Yeah.
That sounds like the part of a plant.
And then I have some family, my husband's family, sometimes still call me, even after 12 years, Phylecia. Whatever. That's close. But yeah, Phylecia is more common in America.
Okay.
So my name's just spelled a little bit different. Normally you find it spelled with an F. But
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that makes, right, yeah.
It does make
And
sense.
it's funny because there's a plant called Phylecia, so I wondered if that's what you got called, because it's just sort of like transposing the C and the A.
did y'all have the Cosby Show here?
Yes.
Like in the 80s, 90s, yeah. So I was named after Phylecia Rashad. She was the actress that played the wife in the Cosby Show.
Oh.
And that was my mom's favourite show, so she liked the name. I think she spelled her name differently, so I don't know if my mom accidentally spelled it wrong. or she was like, I'll just change it a little bit. But yeah, that's who I was named after.
Interesting. I was named after Brigitte Bardot. I don't know what went
Were
wrong.
you?
I think my dad must have had a thing for her.
Did your mum not mind?
Well, my mum's half Irish, so she was happy to go with Bridget, but my dad wanted the Brigitte spelling.
Brigitte.
And do you get called Brigitte all the time?
Yes, I do. And just like you, Phylecia, I just think I can't be bothered to correct people because I don't, I'll answer to anything. I don't really mind.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you pronounce it? Bridget?
Bridget, yes.
Bridge.
D, like a
Bridge.
D. Bridget
Yes.
or Bridget.
And in fact, in Suffolk, where I'm from, people call me Bridget.
That's not pretty.
I know, it's not pretty. I probably should stick to Brigitte.
Yeah, just call me Brigitte.
Call me Brigitte.
I was going to be Nicola until the next door neighbour, mum's, had a baby like the day before I was born, and they called her Nicola, so they had a last minute change of plan.
They must have heard through the walls. They're going to call me Nicola.
Yes. I don't know why Nicola. But,
I can't see you as a Nicola.
no, I don't mind Fiona. It's and then Nikki, definitely not a Nikki. No.
I always wanted to be Lucy with an IE. I was just boring. Why? Story of my life.
Anyway, back to Phylecia.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
We go off on tangents, I'm afraid.
That's good. That's how my mind works
Exactly.
anyway.
It's the restless creative mind.
Yeah.
We are all a bit like that. It's a bit like, oh, butterflies.
Yeah, glad I'm not the only one. I was just talking to my husband last night, so I've got two young kids. We're in probably the busiest stage of life, and I have so much stuff going on, not just work, but loads of other stuff. And I was laying down in bed last night, I was like, I might have ADHD, because I saw this video on TikTok or something. What ADHD looks like in an adult. And I'm like, that is me. That's me. I mean, I don't know if I do, or if I'm just, I was like having this deep discussion. I always have my deep discussions right before I'm about to go to bed. I'm like, what if I do? I wonder if there's like I wonder if there's been like research into how to cope, because I am so disorganized and so messy, and I bounce around, like my brain's like this, like all the time. And I thought maybe, trying to own a business, that's not great. You know what I mean? So you've got the creative side, and then the business, you've got to like be, but sensible. I'm not like I'm not like that. And I'm like, maybe there's some certain coping mechanisms. So my husband is very organized and he's very efficient. Okay. Like the opposite of me. And he, you need a time block, and you need to have your top 3 list priorities, blah, blah, blah. And that's all fine and dandy, but I lose the diary. I can't find the to-do list. If I'm doing one of my top 3s and something else pops into my head, I have this sense of urgency about everything. I'm like, that really needs to be done right now. And so I was like trying to think through, like, they don't actually need to be done right now, do they? But anyway, I did quickly before, again, I was supposed to be setting up for this podcast, and my brain was like, what about ADHD? So I was like Googling ADHD.
That sounds so normal, though, honestly. I think it's
okay, great.
Yeah. I think it is just the restless brain. I went through a stage. I think it's just that.
There's a couple of my friends actually recently who've been diagnosed with ADHD, and I was like, well, that just sounds like creativity to me, and I don't know anything about ADHD, so
well, me either. All I know is that when I looked at the list, a lot of it was like ADHD in adults, and a lot of it sounded like me, except for like careless and no attention to detail. And I was like, that's not me. Pretty particular on details. So I don't know. Maybe it is just the creative brain.
I think your description of a creative business as well. I think a lot of people in a creative business, they start that business because of their creativity, but to actually run a business requires a completely different mindset, which if you're creative, I think a lot of people really struggle with, because that's just not the way your brain works. But you find yourself in that situation where you need to be a bit more ordered and organized, and it's not easy.
Watching, I don't know if you've seen, it's on Prime, it's like The Men Who Built America. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's about, it's like a documentary about some of the men, entrepreneurial, like cutthroat men that built America, like Vanderbilt and Rockefeller and Carnegie and all this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of like businessy snippets in there that seem so good. And all these people and they interview successful entrepreneurs from today about them. And they're like, all these things that successful entrepreneurs have, like they see an opportunity in the market and then they just go for it. They take risks, they do all this kind of stuff. And it's like, as a creative, you can kind of do those things at the same time, but you're also I don't find myself super cutthroat. So it's like, I can't balance like cutthroat. I'm just like, everybody can do it. It's fun. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you do that too. I'll encourage you to do that as well. Even though, like these guys were like, they're my competition. I'm going to buy them out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm going to run them into the ground, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be successful if that's what successful means. You know what I mean?
No, that's not a comfortable place.
No, it's not.
So
it's interesting to hear those. Yeah, and that was a common word used to describe them, ruthless. And I'm like, I'm not that. I'll just play with my paper and my corner of the wall and enjoy that. So anyway, I think that is that balance, isn't it?
It is very interesting. While you're moving your microphone, it's rubbing a bit. Can you put it back in your? It makes a bit of a noise. Sorry.
She's very sensitive to noise.
Yeah. Does this?
Well, no, I was thinking of the recording. I wasn't thinking of me. Is that
better?
Oh, actually, you sound much better. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I think the microphone wasn't working.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So these earphones, I never use earphones, but I can't actually. It's like I can hear you, but I can't hear myself.
Okay.
That's why I took it out. But that's
maybe try the other one out
because
it's got the microphone on it.
Yeah. How's that? Yeah. Can you hear better now?
Can you hear me better now?
Yes,
perfect.
That's fine.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Just perfect.
I'm definitely. I've never listened. I never had headphones because I don't know about you. Again, this is probably because of my brain. I like silence. So I don't listen to anything. I don't listen to music. I don't listen to, I have friends that listen to audiobook and podcasts and all kinds of stuff while they're doing stuff. My brain can't handle it.
I'm
just like,
exactly
I'm a
the
bit like that.
same.
Yeah.
And I feel terrible because
Yeah.
we're doing a podcast and I don't listen to podcasts.
No.
I like listening to the birds sing, and as you say,
Yeah.
silence. That's
Yeah.
all I need.
Yeah.
And
Whenever I'm in the garden, I never play anything because I
No.
want to hear the
Yeah.
noises around me,
Yes.
and I don't have anything on deliberately.
Isn't that interesting?
And it's funny because I cleared the workshop. Oh my goodness, I cleared the workshop at the weekend, and that's over a year. But the whole of lockdown, my workshop has been out of action, and it's been a real block. And I had this time, and that's when I play stuff, and I have my music on, and it's a bit like I've had a light turned on. I actually think I've just missed that whole listening to something and doing stuff and clearing, and I think clearing it has helped as well. So, but it's funny, it's been my lockdown block. Weird. Anyway, we're going off at a real tangent now. Let's go back to Phylecia.
Okay.
So, tell us about you. How have you ended up? Because you're obviously doing. You tell us what you're doing. Just tell us a bit about you.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm doing making handmade paper. So I've been printing letterpress for about 11 years now. Maybe I should. What I'm doing now is letterpress and handmade paper. Still in very much kind of in the wedding industry world, but also probably doing stationery for other people, like branding and stuff, similar to what I did with Fiona.
Like me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, so
Yeah,
you did Fiona's beautiful new.
Yeah. Oh, not the artwork, the paper. It's the most beautiful paper.
You
this is
made
just
that
blank
paper.
stuff.
Yeah, make that paper now. So so for Fiona, she already had her designs and illustrations made, and I just letterpress printed them on handmade paper, the paper that I made. So I'll probably go back a little bit. So when I first moved to England, I got a degree in journalism. But it was basically focused on public relations. So in America, you can study loads of stuff, whatever you want to do. Whereas here, you kind of have to narrow down when you're like 16, which is I can't imagine. Anyway, I didn't even know what I wanted to do at university. So I even took a whole class in what should I do with my life, because I don't know. I'm interested in absolutely everything, like sometimes people try to separate like science and math from creativity, but I don't think they're separate. Like I absolutely love math. I loved chemistry. I loved science. I loved anatomy. So I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And so halfway through, when I was in university, I was studying, my degree was going to be in public relations because I was getting a degree in journalism. That's lumped under journalism. But at the same time, I was doing a pre-med degree because I thought I want to be a doctor, maybe. I don't know what I want to do. So I loved all my science classes, like anatomy, all of them. And I just loved like weird stuff, like when I would do lab and anatomy. I am going off topic here, but this is exciting. When I would do lab and anatomy, I loved when the cadavers were rolled out and we could like study them. Like I find it fascinating.
Oh, real ones.
Yeah, real ones. Yeah, but most people are like, "Oh, that's so gross." Just like it's so fascinating to me, seeing the different muscle groups and depending on what you were studying in that section of lab or whatever, the cadavers would look different. Like so, sometimes they would be skinned. That sounds awful, but so that you could see the muscles and the sinews. Anyway, I just found it all very fascinating. Smelled funny, but fascinating. But so by the last year of university, or when it should have been my last year, but you can keep going if you're not finished. All of my friends were graduating and getting like big girl jobs, moving to the city, and I was like, well, I want to do that. And I was so done with school, but at the same time, I wasn't finished. So if I wanted to do pre-med, because I added it on later, I still needed another few years. And then in America, you then go to medical school after that for another 4 or 5 years. And I was like adding up. I'm like, I'm going to be like 27. I'm like, oh, that's way too old. Like, I want to go. I need to get out of here. So I dropped it all and decided not to be a doctor, graduated with my degree. Anyway, I don't know why I told you that. But basically, when I came to...
I'm dying to know what you're doing with dead human bodies now.
Nothing, actually. I've lost my edge, actually. Definitely lost my edge with bodies. Like, I cannot even clean up my own child's vomit. You know how they say, like, oh, when you're a mother, it's fine. Honestly, like, nasty poop, even from my own children, like, bleh,
but dead bodies are fine.
Yeah, exactly. Any cadaver.
Cadaver, I can handle that. So anyway, I was working in a PR and social media firm in Leeds, actually, when I first moved to England. And
so where were you in America? Sorry to
Georgia.
Oh, okay.
So I'm kind of split. Like, I grew up in Florida till I was about 14, and then when I started high school, my family moved to Georgia, so I went to University of Georgia as well. And my parents still live in Georgia, so I feel more from Georgia because I kind of grew up there, like did all big girl stuff there. So I met my husband. He did an internship in Atlanta for a year after he graduated uni. I say that now that I'm in England.
Now you're a Brit.
Yeah, well, we don't even say university in America. We say college, but that's completely different here, isn't it? So anyway, he lived in America for a year, and we met when he came over for a year and started dating, and then he brought me over here. So I was saying, okay, so when I was in the social media agency or public relations, I think maybe the creativity in me, so social media was still very new, not only in the US, but definitely in the UK. And I think that I was full of creativity, but a lot of clients were like, oh, I don't know about Twitter or Facebook, and we're and you just couldn't do anything. So you'd have all these wonderful social media campaigns planned and all this creativity, but the client would be like, oh, could you just do a Facebook page? And I was like, it's so boring. So anyway, I think there's the creativity side of me, but I'm also definitely like to work for myself. Like, I have my dad, so both of my parents were creative. My dad's a builder. He's always had his own business. And just, I see that freedom of working for yourself. And when you have so much, what you feel is so much potential, and you're like, oh, I'm doing all this for somebody else. Like, myself, So anyway, I just remember just being fairly miserable. It probably wasn't just the job. It was probably, Leeds. British weather, like no, it was just it was so hard. Like, new job, new marriage, new country, and honestly, gray weather for about 3 months. And I was like, where is the sun? Like, I'm walking through Leeds, like, everybody's wearing gray and black, and the sky is gray and black, and everyone on the train's all the same color. I'm wearing like bright colors, and I'm like, whoa, God, why did you bring me here? So I think I was just like, whoa. So I'd come home like crying, like, oh, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to do this. And my husband was like, oh my gosh. Like, I think he probably felt bad because he always, he was probably just a bit like, oh, if you're really that miserable, just leave, like, just quit. And obviously just leave me. No, he was like, I think because we were both at the beginning of our careers, we weren't making loads of money. So for me to quit, we could survive off of it, but it wasn't like, and I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to start my own business. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I like paper. I like stationery. Let me just look into that. And I think a lot of people who go into the wedding stationery world have done that from getting their invitations done. And they realize actually paper and stationery is just amazing. Maybe not all people, but I did. And I thought I could do that. I could really do that. Layer all these different color papers, really pretty. And so I just Googled, like, wedding stationery business. And I saw a photo. Letterpress was not really well known here and still just emerging in America. And I just saw a photo of a letterpressed wedding invitation. And I was like, what is that? Like, that looks so pretty. If I make wedding stationery, it's going to have to be like that. Like, all of a sudden, all other stationery just looked a bit flat, literally. I was like, I'm going to do letterpress. That's nice. So letterpress, what is letterpress? So that's how I started. So I basically thought I want to do letterpress. I bought my first press. I hadn't actually been to London in almost a year since living here. And actually in America, everyone thinks you're in London. Yeah. If you say you live in England. Oh, how's London? I'm like, not actually been to London.
It's a long way away.
Exactly. So the first time I went to London, we drove down because I bought my first little tabletop press, and it just kind of gone from there. So taught myself letterpress, which was just like any craft, like a learning curve, and then got a bigger press and started out selling cards and stuff at craft fairs and stuff, which was soul destroying. And And I just really didn't like that either. I was just like, I think this sounds terrible. Maybe the general public, I just don't like interaction with it. Like,
Yeah.
But I think that's face-to-face selling is really hard because, you know, people are very polite to you and go, yes, it's lovely. And they'll go, I'll go away and have a think. And you know, that means they just don't want it, you know what? And you've stood there for 10 minutes extolling the virtues of what you're trying to sell. And that's, you know, people are polite, but it is soul destroying. I completely
it's really
understand
difficult. Yeah. And also when you're going, and obviously at the wrong stalls and pitching to the wrong people, because like next to me would be some lady selling 10 cards for £1, and everyone's buying from them, and it's just like, you're not appreciating the art here. Like, and then it's too much to explain. Like, I'm like, oh, these are letterpressed. What's letterpress? Well, it's like an old printing press. Like, if you touch it, you can see the difference. All the paper is cotton. Like, it's better than that lady's card. Like, this is worth the full £3.50 I'm selling it for. Woman, buy it. But I just can't, you know, I just like, it's too much trying to explain it. You've got to find your people, you know, and that's part of business, isn't it? It's finding the people that you don't have to explain it, you know, like, well, kind of. And I think the first several years of my business, like, everybody was, what is letterpress? So then I'm convincing couples this is what you want, whereas now everyone knows what letterpress is. They seek you out for it because it is beautiful. So letterpress and hot foil are very similar, except for hot foil obviously has foil in it, but so people are seeking that out now. But at the beginning, you know, 10 years ago, it was like, this is really worth paying for, I promise. But anyway, so that's how I got into wedding stationery. And then had a lot of not family issues, but when I first had my first son, he's 8 now, that was a lot of what I think a lot of mothers go through, like juggling. Like, I got this business, but I've got a child who I absolutely love and adore. And you're just constantly juggling this mom guilt of half-assed business owner, half-assed mom, you know what I mean? And you're just like, can I say that? Yeah. Anyway, so I just I remember juggling with that a lot, and that was really difficult because I started my business not how you would start a business. I didn't save up money for it, you know, so I'm like a little bit of money and then trying to invest, and didn't know what I was doing, don't have the business mind, kind of creative, scatterbrain, you know, it was just very unorganized, but you're trying to look polished, aren't you, on social media, and like, I've got this together, but you don't.
I love that honesty. That's so true. So true.
Yeah. And so anyway, I just remember feeling, and you know, speaking of that honesty, I'm really passionate about talking to women honestly about business, because I think that there's so much fake out there. Even the stuff that's supposed to be authentic is fake. Do you know what I mean? They're just like, you can do this, and it's like, well, you can, but you might also be miserable. Let's just accept that. You know, sometimes something's got to give. If you want to be an excellent mom, then business got to take back burner, period. Like, that's just the truth of the matter. So you just need to decide what your priorities are.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think women are told, particularly today, you can have everything and do everything. And yes, you can, but you still have to choose. You still have to make choices. You can't actually do everything all at the same time. It's just not possible.
No, I agree with that. And I remember reading this article a long time ago about I agree with the equality of women and everything, but the idea of feminism these days is so detrimental to women, because this idea that you can and do and deserve, it is your right to have everything, is really hard for women. So when you have a magazine article written by women, edited by women, and the heroes that are held up are CEOs who have 3 kids, who are doing everything, you think, oh, well, that's the only thing worthy of praise. So you've got women who are like, actually, I want to be at pickup and drop off for my kids, and at every single assembly. They're not heralded as heroes because they also have a 6-figure business. And it's just like this, these are women that are writing these stories. Don't you see that actually we have a choice, and your choice is beautiful? And that's what true feminism is to have a choice, to say, actually, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. Great. Do you know what I mean? And flourish in that or whatever. And so I think that sometimes there's all these messages about just having to do everything, and it might be possible. Because I even think about myself, like, even now I feel overwhelmed. I don't have a 6-figure business, and I'm there at drop off and pick up and everything, and it's just really difficult. And I think that a lot of these people might have nannies, You know what I mean? And house cleaners and all these other extras that they're not writing about because it doesn't sound as good. And that's where the honesty is. You're trying to be authentic, but you're not really being. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent again. What was I talking about? The babies. So I had Jacob, and then when I had my second, who is now 4, I decided I'm taking a year off maternity leave. Even if I have a business, I'm taking a year off. But I think my heart wasn't necessarily in the business at the time either, because I was like, I do not want to go through that juggling again. And I caveat that with that I am not the breadwinner. So I had the flexibility to do that. Like my husband, he makes just enough money to cover all of our necessities, and my business covers all the nice to haves. And we are happy to sacrifice the nice to haves when that's necessary for our family. So I say that as well because I think there are a lot of women who have to make money, so they don't have the flexibility that I have. So I decided I'm going to take a year off, but deep down in my heart, I thought, this is it. Like, I'm not going to go back to work. And I just remember crying, like feeling I want to take a year off, but I feel like I'm letting go of part of my heart because this is my business and I'm just letting all this go. But this is right. This is for my family. Like, I'm not going through that again where I'm juggling everything and feeling all the guilt. So I decided to take a maternity leave. But at the same time, I subconsciously think this is not maternity leave. This is forever. Like, I'm done. Unless God wells up in my heart another desire for my business. Like, we'll just see how that plays out. And I remember probably about 8 or 9 months into maternity leave, it was still there. That creativity, that I still want to do it. Like, I want to do it again now that my child's a little bit older. And so I relaunched my business. It was Phylecia Sutherland, bespoke wedding stationery. Did this beautiful photo shoot to kind of get everything in order. And then that launched in the summer, and I launched a house collection as well, which I'd never had before. I'd only worked bespoke and a house collection, all this kind of stuff. And then my youngest was just sick all the time. And, I couldn't even focus on my business because he was, every single time there was a cold or something, he would get a chest infection, like always sick. And he was off nursery all the time. So I'm at home. So I've taken on work, but can't do it because he's at home. Like, I'm just trying to get my head above water here. And you don't want to I didn't regret my child, but do you know what I mean? When you feel like, ooh, I don't know, the feeling is just a bit, okay. So, but luckily, and I totally believe this is a God thing. And this is that part of being honest, is that even though I launched my house collection and I was quite successful before I went maternity leave, no one ordered anything. I'm talking about 0 sales. And I'm just like, what? Why? Why is this happening? And now I can see that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, not everybody's religious. I'm a Christian, but I'm just like, what? God knew that I couldn't handle that, because if I had all these clients that I thought that I wanted and my child was in hospital and all this kind of stuff, like, I just wouldn't have been able to handle it. And actually the culmination was that by just before Christmas, he ended up in hospital with severe pneumonia because they just weren't catching it. And eventually they were like, oh my gosh, he's got pneumonia really badly. And he was in hospital for 2 weeks, and I was just laid there for 2 weeks by his side. Like, he was so tiny and so frail as well.
How old was he then?
He was 2 then.
Oh, goodness.
So, and he was just on IV drips. And I was so sad for him and like raging mama bear at the doctors, because I was taking him I kept taking him to the doctor. I was like, something's not right. But because he was so lively, he would come in there and be like, yeah. And I'm like, why don't you act sick?
Yeah.
Be like you are at home.
Yeah, I was like, he is sick. He's lively, but then he'll crash. And then he wasn't having a constant fever either. They're like, does he have a fever? I'm like, well, not all the time. But the thing is when a doctor diagnoses children, they should be taking the mother's word as like a 3-part thing. It's like, look at the kid, your knowledge, but also mama, like, she knows, So I kept taking him, and then it culminated where I took him to an out-of-hours doctor, and Eli walks in bouncing, eating a bag of chips. And the out-of-hours doctor instantly, you could see on his face, nothing wrong with this kid. I'm like, there is something. So my husband actually took him that time. And I was teaching a calligraphy class, I think, at the same time, like still trying to do stuff. And then the next day I was like, something is wrong with him. So I went to the doctor and I said, I want to see somebody, and I don't want to see our doctor. Like, I want to see somebody else, like somebody else that knows. And I just broke down there because it was a nurse, and she listened and she was like, I can't actually hear anything. I think his lung might be collapsed. And I just had all this emotion of anger because this is your fault. But at the same time, like, feeling I failed my child as a mother, like, really I should have taken him to A&E, or I should have. Anyway.
It's so bad though, isn't it? I mean, I've had a friend who her sister has had awful problems, and she kept going to the doctor in a very similar way, and they just completely dismissed her as some silly woman who didn't know what she was talking about. There doesn't seem to be any credibility given to your instinct, and their default position seems to be idiot, and you have to sort of like prove otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, one of the things I gave feedback to, because I was going to complain about the doctor formally, well, she called me to try to like make me not complain. And I was like, listen, I am a very forward person. I get that, and even she made me feel like I was an inconvenience. And I mean, I didn't say this, but I think British people are very polite. I'm like, if you make me feel like that, imagine what all of your other patients feel like. And so we had a long conversation. She was like, well, I'm just not very, I'm not a very sympathetic person. I'm like, I don't care about your personality. You don't have to like me. But if I tell you that my child is sick, then I want you to listen to me. And I think that you should listen to all your patients as well. Anyway, we're going off on a tangent here.
Sort out the NHS as well.
You're loving your tangents.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I do absolutely love the NHS. It's one of the reasons why
absolutely.
I feel like I couldn't move back to America. I love it. It is a blessing, but there are inefficiencies out there. But anyway, so that was another thing that happened just as I think I'm getting my head above water and business and everything. And the reason I'm telling all this is why I decided to make paper is if I make paper, it's a product on a shelf that I can work around my family. So instead of being so client focused and on their deadlines, because I had planned on making paper anyway, but just for my clients, because handmade paper has been massive for about 7 years. And there's only a couple of us, and now even starting in the past couple of years, that make handmade paper in England. So most people, myself included, would buy paper from people in America, and there's a few in Europe, but there's no one in the UK that makes it. So for years, even before Eli got sick, I'm like, I want to make handmade paper. It's beautiful. I like making with my hands. It's again like that idea. I see a hole in the market, but I've got a family. It's really difficult.
How describe that process of making the paper.
Yeah. So paper is made from anything cellulose, so anything plant-based. So my paper is made from cotton and now sisal. You heard of sisal? So it was Abaca, but the suppliers were European and they won't ship to us anymore. We've Brexited. So anyway, that was a hiccup. But anyway, so now it's sisal. Both are sourced in the UK. And so what you do is you take the fibers and they're softened. So if you're taking it raw, let's say if you were picking something from your garden, which you could, you would just have to boil it down and maybe in some caustic, whatever, to break it down. I don't do that part. And then you beat it, and then you can beat it in a beater. So I have something called a Hollander beater. You could do it by hand if you wanted, but
That feels like Popeye.
Yeah, no, I don't know. So anyway, so you beat all the stuff into a pulp, basically, and then you've got a pulp. So my fibers that I use, someone has already done that part. So they've like beaten it down and then made it into quite loose sheets that are meant to be rehydrated and pulped properly in a beater. So that's what I do. So I buy the cotton and the sisal in sheet form already. And then, so you've got the pulp. And then you pour it, so there's a lot of water involved. So then you pour the pulp into like a big rectangle vat of water. And then you've got something called a mold and decal. And there are two people.
Lovely, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
Decal.
I want one of them.
Oh, I have to show you one. Let me show you one.
Oh,
Let's see it.
let's show and tell.
I think we need to tell all our guests to do show and tell.
Please bring something
Yes.
to show. Yeah.
Always bring something.
Ooh.
Right here. So this is it here.
So this is a mould and decal.
So that's the mold, and that's the decal. And what happens is you, I guess for people who are only listening,
Yes.
it's basically like two picture frames put together, and one side has a screen on it. And so when you have your vat full of water and pulp, you like shove it, scoop up the pulp, and you kind of shake it to make it all even. So the pulp sits in what's called the decal and sits on top of the screen, and so you just let all the water run out of it.
Which is a very fine sieve-like fabric, is it?
Yeah, it's very fine sieve. It's almost like insect screen. I think that actually is. I've made these, so this is an insect screening that I just ordered off eBay. And so then you take the decal off. So I don't know if you've ever heard of, with handmade paper, you have a deckled edge.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason it's called a decal edge is because it's made with because the decal causes it to have that. So I'll just show you, because I've got a piece here. So those edges there are called a deckled edge.
Oh, that's what's so beautiful.
That is what's beautiful about handmade paper, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So when you have like a whole stack, like people just to die for those edges there. So anyway, there's all the uneven
I need to declare my absolute geekery about paper now. So I studied, you know, I've told you this story before, but so I actually studied print at uni for 3 years, got a diploma in print, and we studied things like paper making, letterpress printing, and I'm one of those saddos who goes on holiday and goes to a paper mill.
Oh, I'd do that. That's not sad.
We went to Italy. We went to Italy about 2 years ago, and we walked up to this very, artisan paper mill, and it was just, I just find it absolutely fascinating. And everywhere I go, I buy rough textured paper. So, I mean, that's why I came to you, because of the paper. And it's just so beautiful. It just really spoke to me. And beautiful,
so had you already heard the word decal, apart from deckled edge? But you knew that it was a decal and a mould, or a mould and decal?
Oh, no, I didn't. And it's funny because I studied print. I mean, God, it's a long time ago. A lot of the sort of like the actual intricacies I've forgotten, But we used to print on letterpress printers. So we were students going into the printing industry, and they were teaching us we had a day of litho, so litho printing, but also a day on letterpress printing. So we were taught, and this was taught to people who were going into the industry as if it was a thing, I mean, it was so antiquated. It was, it was just kind of like really, it wasn't a proper printing wasn't done on letterpress presses, I mean, it was maybe done for things like, it's small run, isn't it? It's never big run. I mean, a lot of what we were doing was commercial.
But it's such a beautiful craft, isn't it?
It just
skill.
Rings all my bells. I just absolutely love it. So anyway, you carry on.
Yes. It rings all your bells. Well, you're my people.
I am your people, and I was going to say that before when you were saying you're looking for your people. I am your people. I just absolutely adore what you do.
Oh yeah. So. Did you want me to finish?
Yes.
In the decal edge.
We're in the decal.
So what you remove the decal off the mold, and so sitting on the mold, if you can imagine, you'll have like little pieces of paper here. So this one obviously got 9 A7 sizes, but back in the day it would just be one big sheet, and people still make big handmade paper sheets, but what is missing in the industry in the UK anyway is small sizes like this. And that was where my niche is, or it is where my niche is. So originally I was going to make handmade paper for myself and my clients, but then I thought we all need it, and actually we have so many wonderfully talented stationers in the UK, including other letterpress printers and foil printers, that I thought this is a way that I can serve them as well and work with them, So anyway, so I make smaller sizes, because even though there's companies that make big sheets of handmade paper and have that deckled edge, if you want like this, like a place card size, you'd have to cut it, and then you lose the deckled edge. So the only way to get a deckled edge on small pieces is to make them small out of the vat. So you will get, because it's so popular and because handmade paper is so expensive, and rightly so. Oh my goodness, rightly so. It takes forever. Is people will hand tear other paper, which, I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't even look. It still looks good because you get the rough edge, but it's just not the same. You can tell that what's the difference between deckled and hand torn, and I guess you get what you pay for, don't you? But anyway, so a deckled edge is you have to have a frame to make smaller sheets to get the deckled edge on even the tiniest little pieces, really.
So
So
how
how
are
do
you
you
doing
get
this?
Come over and have a good paper making lesson.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sort of imagining an amazing studio where you've got vats of things and drying and dripping and
well, basically it is, but it isn't so this room here is basically a front room. We have a Victorian house. It's got a bay window. I don't know, I can't I'm not on a computer, so I can't really turn it, but this has a huge table on it, and it's where I dry the paper, and I've got all the stacks of paper, but the paper making is so wet. And I am a messy creative. So I've seen some people making paper in their house with like hardwood floors, and I'm like, how's that even possible? So I was making my paper. We have a greenhouse that came with the house. It's got electricity and water that's run to it, but it's on the other side of the house that never gets any sun, so we never plant anything in it. So I was like, oh, I'll make it in here, because then water can go everywhere. I have a full fisherman's waders outfit.
Brilliant.
She does. She still looks very glamorous.
Yeah, I bet.
I don't know about that. My husband's like, oh my goodness, what are you? I'm like, I have to wear this, otherwise I'm fully soaked from like head to toe in waters. I don't know how other paper makers do it, but anyway, I'm a mess. So in the winter, I just couldn't hack it. It was way too cold out there to do it. So I thought, I'm going to have to move inside. And I had two big printing presses. I have an Arab printing press, which is like a flywheel, really old 1890s press. And then I had a huge, and I say had because I just sold it to make room for the paper making, Heidelberg press, which is electric, lovely, lovely press. I was sad to get rid of it, but so I moved inside to basically our mudroom, much to my husband's like how many spaces in this house are you going to take? And so
that's what living with a creative is like.
It sounds very familiar.
It's so funny actually, because he's such a minimalist. Like we like to cull our house and get rid of stuff, so the rest of our house is all nice and minimal. And he said the other day, like, oh, the house is actually very except for your studio, but I just shut the door on that. I was like, well, I need everything in that studio. Anyway, so I'll finish explaining.
Yes.
So then you've got your paper or your lumps of molded wet pulp is on your mold. It's sat on top of the screen. So then you've got what you call a post, which is a stack that felt. Originally it's felt. And then you basically take your mold and flip it upside down and kind of drop the paper onto the post. So this comes away. And so now my paper is sitting in little lumps, on the felt, okay? And then I place another felt over it, and you just keep going, and you build up all these papers. And they got to be lined up perfectly, otherwise they won't press well. But anyway, so you've got your post of paper. So this is all like wet, pulpy shaped paper, okay? And then I take that and I stick that in. I bought a hydraulic press. Like that you would find in like a mechanic's workshop. So, and then I just, and I just squeeze the whole post, squeeze all the excess water out of it.
So if you're now doing that in your front room, where does all the
carpet?
So
that's in the lounge.
I'm everywhere. Okay, so the paper making, pulling out the vats and stuff is now in my mudroom, which is the only, and that's fine because that floor in there is tiled. And then I carry that post back outside to the greenhouse because I left the hydraulic press in the greenhouse. Right. So then I carry it. And everything is like back-breaking work. Like the day I make paper, when it's dinner time and I'm sat with the boys, I'm just like, oh, my back hurts, my arms hurt. Like, it's a good workout, I guess. But so then I go to the hydraulic press outside, press all the water out of it. And then I carry that post back inside, and now you can actually see the sheets they look pretty much like this, but they're damp. So you can almost, because the fiber that I've chosen is quite strong, you can peel it off the felt and it'll look like that, but floppy and damp. and I dry them in a drying box. So you can dry lots of different ways. Some people hang them. Some people stick them to like glass or plastic and they dry flat like that. But I dry mine in a drying box, which is again another like stacked bit, and you put it all in there in between corrugated cardboard, and there's a big fan behind it. And I love this drying process because they dry flat and they dry quicker, and then I can just keep going. You know,
So I guess if they're hanging, they might start to curl a little bit.
They do. So the way you dry it also changes the surface. So this was all like testing. Like I knew in my head what I wanted my paper to look like and feel like, because I had wedding stationers and letterpress printers in mind. And luckily I've been one for 10 years. So I knew exactly what I wanted. And when I was drying the stuff, we have an Aga in our kitchen, and also I don't have the capacity. Like my husband is like, no, you're not drying everything in the kitchen, but
you can take the kitchen over as well.
I know. So I dried everything in our kitchen above the Aga, and they dry much quicker, but they were all curled and rough, and I just didn't like the surface at all. I was like, it's too. You do want it rough, but not too rough. I don't know. Anyway, so I dry mine in a drying box that has a fan, and it's got all these, you stack it in between corrugated cardboard, which allows the air to flow through. And I've added some other things in there like screens. So now it can dry in like 12 hours, which is really great. And then so the next day when I make more paper, the drying box is empty so that I can then make new. So it is a lovely process. I think I have some videos on my Instagram if you ever wanted to like watch it, but I need to do like a proper good
workshop. You need to do a workshop, and we're coming.
Well, I actually have decided, I think, I was telling my husband, I was like, I don't want to be in the mudroom anymore, but I don't want to convert, this room is so beautiful that I don't want to like convert it into a wet room, really. But we have an outbuilding out behind our house that me and my husband are like, well, maybe we only use it for coal, like the coalmen drop off coal there and some other stuff. They can just drop off in the cellar. There's still like a coal chute in our cellar. I'm like, So I think I need to save up money for like the next year, and I think I'm going to convert that building into the paper making studio, which will be so good to have my own space.
And you have to carry it everywhere. And
exactly. That's what I'm looking forward to. So
anyway, so when you made mine, so you that sort of like frame that you had with the 9 things in, you just had, I presume, one. So I had it was kind of A5, wasn't it, size, but it was uneven shape.
Yeah.
So that was just one per frame, was it?
Okay, so it's yours. What I did was I took I had at that time, because you were like you were my first big client, Fiona. Wonderful, yeah. So I'd only just launched making paper, and then Fiona was like, I want this, this, and this, and I was like, oh no.
But to be fair, I was like, I don't care how rough it is, I don't care how imperfect it is, I don't care how rubbish it looks. I will take all your imperfect stuff, because not actually off cuts, but I didn't care about. I wanted it to be really, really imperfect. So.
Yeah, exactly. So what I used was a mold that was for one big sheet.
Yeah.
And before I had all my molds like this made, what I was using was like a thick foam something that I found online, and my husband was like cutting out with a jigsaw my rectangles until I decided this is too much. Like I just want to make my own. So at that time it was fine. So what I did was I cut imperfect on purpose shapes in the mold. Well, it would technically be the decal. So the mold is the screen and the decal is the shape.
Yeah.
So I cut yours out. So I did roughly A6, but then told Eddie to like, don't make it perfect. Like kind of go off here a little bit and go off here a little bit. And so you had a bespoke decal made for yours. Even though they were imperfect, it was like purposely on purpose imperfect.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. I mean, it was very precise, but imperfect.
Yeah, exactly. No, so that's how we did. I had to make and I think that if anyone ever, although I'm making so many molds and decals of all the different sizes that anybody would want, if somebody wants something totally different shape, that's how you'd have to do it. Is just get a foam something and then cut the shape out and use that, because it would just be. That's the most cost-effective way to do it. Otherwise, you'd have to go and make something like this. So these were made by a company in Leeds that do like CNC cutting. So I just put them all together and I epoxied them myself and then added the screens and stuff. But anyway, yeah, so it's actually, I thought letterpress was a lot of work, and it is, but it is nowhere near a lot of work compared to paper. And now I can see why people charge so much.
It's expensive.
Yeah,
It's properly handmade and takes time and concentration and skill. Yes, years of skill and understanding what it is you're trying to create.
Yeah, and actually, I'm so thankful that when when I first started making the paper, I thought it was going to take ages because y'all talked about this on the podcast about like imposter syndrome, and I'm just rocking up like I'm going to make paper, and very quickly, and maybe this is the science side of me, like I took on paper making from a science and mathematical perspective because obviously I wanted it to be beautiful and I'm very particular about it, but I did so much mathematical formulations to make sure that every single time I made this, it was the exact same thickness as this, which is very difficult when it's handmade. So I'm like, it's got to be possible. So my husband actually works at Yorkshire Water, and he's done lots of roles there, but one of them is in sludge. And they'd work with dry solids all the time. So talking about the consistencies and the thickness, and so we honestly sat down and just did all this scientific, like mathematical, if I want the paper to be this thickness, I need to put this much in every time, because you have to keep the vat at the same ratio. And I'm like, no one else is writing about this. Like, why has no one else done like a math book about paper making? And actually I posted on my stories once, and there's this girl in America who's been really helpful with paper making. She was like, oh, I really applaud you for chasing unicorns in paper making. And I was like, is that an encouragement or crazy? You know what I mean? I'm like, what do you mean unicorn? Like, it must be possible. Everything's mathematically possible. And then she was like, oh no, it is possible, but no one goes for it because they can't be bothered. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be a letterpress printer, or especially hot foil, the paper has got to be the exact same thickness every time. Otherwise, the print won't work, because the way the presses are set up, it's on the thickness of the paper. And once you set your press up and do all your packing on it, and printers will know what I'm talking about, especially hot foil, they're extra special printers. It's like if you print it and then the next sheet is not thick enough or too thick or is lumpy, then your print is not going to come out. So I'm like, I cannot offer a paper to the wedding stationery world that's not almost as perfect as it could be for being handmade. I don't know. Anyways, I've nailed it. I've got the math. And actually I found that
I've written the book.
There is actually paper makers out there who do the math as well. It wasn't just me. And I found they've created this app, which obviously I discovered after I did all my math. But the great thing was,
now you know how to do it.
Exactly. The great thing is that all of our math lined up. It was exactly the same.
Wow.
Like,
how satisfying was that?
I know. I was like, I did that already.
But does your husband sit there smugly going, yeah, but if I didn't know about sludge.
Yeah. He's totally taken full credit for
all
it.
about the sludge.
He was like, well, if it wasn't for me, you know. But anyway, I mean, I'm very thankful that I did the math and all that kind of stuff, but also thinking of years of work, I am very, without sounding super braggy, so happy with the surface of my paper. And it's exactly what I wanted, and it took like hardly any tries. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, I'm so thankful, because I could have been here for years, and I was ready to launch very quickly, because, and I think it was probably research, like knowing what I wanted my paper to be made out of. And also a bit like Fiona, and maybe you too, a paper snob. Like, I know what I want. I know what I want it to look like. So just getting almost focused, like really focused on what I knew I wanted. So I'm so happy. And there's so many stationers in the UK who are printers as well. And it's their feedback that's been so encouraging. Like, consistently, it's like, Phylecia, your paper is so even and it prints so well. And it's all these feedbacks. It's like, exactly, that's the point of it, was for letterpress and hot foil printers primarily. Obviously other people can use it too, but so to get that feedback is just so encouraging. And to know that like my paper shop pretty much sold out. And so the next month I'm just going to be making loads of paper to stock it. It's just so great, because also it's a product, exactly what I wanted. I can put it on the shelf, and when it sells out, it sells out. And I can kind of dictate how much pressure that puts on my family.
Yeah.
But the
I'm
beautiful
still
thing is
talking.
presumably you can't, this is not something you can scale up and make enormous amounts of. So again, you can charge for it because
Yeah, we
you've
charge
already got
more.
the reputation that it's exactly. But if you've got the reputation that this is beautiful paper to use, people are going to want it.
And
which
in
means-
limited supply.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
I've
think
got
that's
mine.
yeah, you've got yours.
I've got mine.
But I think that's what's so difficult is part of you wants to, it's again coming back to those choices that we talked about making at the beginning. It's like, you know, I was on an interview the other day with this girl that does sessions for other stationers, and she was like, "Oh, will you think about hiring somebody?" I'm like, no, like I don't want to really, because the idea is, for me particularly, and this is very much personal, my idea of success is that it's life-giving to my family. So if my business starts encroaching on time with my children and family, like I want to Netflix and sit and read and talk with my husband every night. So if my business encroaches on that, then it's not successful anymore for me. So it's like, if I could scale up, like there's so much demand out there at the moment that's like I could do it if I wanted. I'm not saying that I wouldn't, but it's like, if I can't fit, I have to make these decisions to design my business to make the money that I need it to make between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. Do you know what I mean? Like on the days that my kids are in school. So that's where I'm at the moment. It's quite difficult actually, because there's so much demand for it. And so you kind of feel bad because you got these people emailing you. I'm like, I don't have any paper at the moment. I don't have time to make it. So then you feel like, is that a failure as a business owner? That
No,
all these
that's a
people
success.
I think so.
Well, yeah, maybe. And I think that's what's so hard, is that part of me feels like, oh, I need to be able to provide this stuff that people want, but I physically can't do it because, you know, it takes all day to make one batch of paper. So it's just finding that balance and then trying to keep people happy as well. But I think there are other paper makers, and I think there's so much demand and there's room for all of us. Does that make sense? So it's trying to not be so competitive like those ruthless American businessmen. So like, actually there's room for all of us, and I can't take everybody. So it's okay that people use different paper makers. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be me.
We've always said that in the floral world, you know, there's always enough work for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, people might look at the three of us and say, well, what we do is very similar. We would probably say our work isn't that similar. And what you want is a client who sees the difference and wants somebody particularly for whatever it is they're doing. And that's where all the work is. They're the right people for you, just as you said before.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm happy where it is at the moment. And I think the next step might be, so I'm still doing wedding stationery when people get in touch. I think I'm scared to say it, but it's like I might cut that out.
We're the same. We've stepped away from weddings, and it is that, oh my goodness, that feels really scary, but it kind of doesn't fit with where you are now, does it?
Yeah,
you know, it's a different vibe.
I still get to, so I've never printed for other people until now as well, because handmade paper, it lends itself to letterpress because it's so uneven. So no, I don't think there's any printing company that will digital print on handmade paper because it's just too fiddly. So most of the people that do offer it, they're printing it themselves from their like at home little printers, which it works. The thinner paper goes through good printers anyway. So it lends itself to hot foil and letterpress. And I've never printed for people before until making the handmade paper, because now I feel like I can letterpress, I can offer that. So I'm still being able to print really beautiful stuff. It's just beautiful stuff designed by other people, which I've never done before because it's scary. But so I think that the next step will be, if it carries on the way it's going, which it will, because at the moment I'm only making white paper. And it's going crazy. Like I haven't even started making colors yet. I'm like,
Get me some dirty paper. I mean, you probably want pretty papers, but I'd want all the dirties.
The dirty stuff. Well, so I did one batch of colored paper, a test, and it was so beautiful.
Don't
so this
show
is
Fiona. Don't show Fiona.
It's all one color, solid. Solid. It's a taupe paper, and people are just crazy for it on Instagram. And they're like, "When's this coming out?" And I'm like, "Ooh, when I have time." Like I need to make. So my plan is, in the next month, I'm going to restock the paper shop with all those new sizes, because I've got loads of new sizes coming out, with paper, and then try to tackle colors.
Cool.
Again, if I've got time, but that's the thing, and that's what it's like, isn't it? When you're creative and you've got business, you've got to keep up with this stuff, but you got other stuff you want to develop. And people, I keep getting emails like, "Oh, you don't have any colors?" I'm like, I will one day. But anyway, that's my next step whenever that comes.
Amazing. So you haven't mentioned as well, you do calligraphy as well. I mean, you sort of touched on it earlier. So where does that fall into the mix?
So calligraphy was actually the year after Eli was sick. So I started teaching calligraphy classes probably in end of 2017, 2018, like really building up my confidence for it. So calligraphy is something that I am by no means one of the best calligraphers. I'm average. I know how to use a pen, and it's not like, but I can teach it. And so I teach beginners classes, which I think another thing in business is that you don't have to be the ultimate best at it to do it. And I think that's true. There's a lot of people that are really successful that aren't that good, really. You know what I mean? But I'm not that. Stars. Yeah, exactly. So I started teaching calligraphy and lettering classes, and then because I taught myself calligraphy because I was doing such high-end bespoke stationery, most people wanted their envelopes calligraphed. I don't know how you're saying. I don't know.
When you get post from Phylecia, it is the most beautiful, swirly, beautiful writing. It fills the envelope, and it's just like,
it's like something to come out of the past.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll send you a card. So I have friends that like won't throw their envelopes away for a birthday just because I wrote their name really pretty, and I'm like, well, I'm going to give you one next year. Take it off of your fireplace. But so I taught myself calligraphy just so it was again one of those things in the market that's like, why do I outsource this if I can do it? So I try to taught myself how to do it. But I've kind of come back around to outsourcing again. I think now that you're busy, I'm like, actually, there are people better than me at this, so I might as well let them do it. So anyway, that's why I taught myself, and then started teaching classes. And I do enjoy those occasionally. Again, I'm an introvert, general public a bit. So I'm just like, I do enjoy creating space for people to enjoy. So sometimes I don't even know if it was the calligraphy. I think it was just being at a table around people.
It's the experience, isn't it? It's just that being with other people.
Yes,
yeah.
I love
you're doing that retreat
that.
as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I do love
that's beautiful.
Calligraphy retreat. Oh wow, I'll tell you about that in a minute. So I do calligraphy. I started teaching classes, and then when Eli became really sick, I thought, I cannot handle all of this. I can't handle clients coming to me and me have to turn them down. I don't know what to do. And so this is just after I just relaunched everything that I thought was going to be something, and it wasn't. And so my husband he was like, I think you just need to cut back everything except for calligraphy. And I was like, that sounds like a really bad idea. That doesn't sound like anything like what I would want, but I trusted his wisdom. And for 2019, I didn't promote myself for wedding stationery. I only did calligraphy classes. And it was really good because Eli being sick and being at home, it was like being able to, well, I've got this class on Saturday and I just need to prep for that, and that's it. And it just gave me the headspace that I needed. So all of 2019, even though my website was there and technically I was still doing wedding stationery, I didn't focus on it. I was just doing calligraphy classes. So by the end of 2019, when I was ready to now start doing handmade paper and letterpress and all kinds of stuff, obviously not knowing coronavirus was about to hit, I thought, I want to keep doing calligraphy classes for the income that it brings, but it actually takes a lot more time than you think in terms of prepping, selling the tickets, sourcing the venues, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, how am I going to be able to teach calligraphy and try to launch this whole paper making thing, because I don't have the time for both. Anyway, like the next day, I get a call from the Modern Calligraphy Company, who are started by this lady named Kirsten Burke and a lady named Jill down south somewhere down south. They are a bigger company, and so they do classes all over, and they asked me if I would be their Yorkshire ambassador. for teaching calligraphy classes. The only catch was that I couldn't teach my own classes anymore. And for 2019, I'd really branded my classes to be all these really pretty colors. I don't know. Again, that experience was a lot to me. And the Modern Calligraphy Company have a very different aesthetic. They're very bright and lively and a lot of energy. And I'm like, oh no. So I can't teach my own classes because they didn't want you to compete with them. So essentially they're buying me out because my classes were very popular up here in Yorkshire. And I thought, so most calligraphers would say no, but calligraphy is not my main thing. So I'm like, secretly, I was like, yes, sign me up right now. But I had to be like super cool. I'm like, okay, well, I'll think about it. But really, I was like, that's perfect. Like I literally was praying for that last night. How can I keep doing calligraphy classes without doing all the work? They source the venue, they pay the venue, they take the tickets, and they pay me.
You just have to show up.
You know what I mean? I was like, yes. So, so that was answered. So that's where I'm at with calligraphy classes at the moment, is that I am their ambassador for Yorkshire. But I was supposed to start in March last year, and then coronavirus hit. So I've taught like one class in that tiny little hole in August. Remember when we were like released for like
we were allowed out.
Also, I live in Bradford, and we've been like locked down way more than the rest of the country. You know, we've not been able to do anything. So, so I've taught one class for them, but now we're picking them back up. So I still teach calligraphy classes for the Modern Calligraphy Company in Yorkshire. And then I have my calligraphy retreat, which is kind of a spillover from when I was teaching those, which the contract didn't cover. Like I can still have my retreat because it's kind of different. It's like a one-off. But yeah, so the calligraphy retreat, talking about experiences, so many of them have been canceled because they've been pushed back for because of coronavirus. But the first one was so wonderful. It was not even about calligraphy. So it's only for women. And when these women came in, so we stay at a bed and breakfast in Haworth. It's on the cobble streets in Haworth called Weavers. And the whole weekend is exclusive. So we had the whole bed and breakfast booked out. And they cook for us as well, breakfast and dinner. And I remember seeing these women come in through the door. I was like super nervous, like, oh, these people, like I've got to put on this. And you could just see like weights lifting off their shoulders, like as they came in the door, because they were just like, I just needed a weekend away. And that's the whole thing was about, was just, there are two classes that I teach, one on the Saturday, one on the Sunday, but I didn't build anything else in because of that purpose, because especially women, and I say that like, not that men aren't busy, but women, we just have so many things, don't we? And it's like, we want to learn something, but sometimes we're trying to learn that in between trying to do this with the kids or trying to do that. And it's like, I want to teach a class and you can learn how to do calligraphy, and then nothing is planned after that. So you can stay here for the rest of the afternoon and do calligraphy you want. You can go for a walk on the moors. You can go down the cobble street, just whatever, go take a nap. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like there's literally nothing planned. You can come back for lunch. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. So, it was so wonderful. The first retreat was just more than I could have imagined, because mostly just to see these women, like it's a small group around a table just opening up about stuff. And like people, I don't know if y'all read Humans of New York on Facebook, but every single person has such an intricate, detailed story and brokenness and sadness and happiness, all these things going on. And you see that as you have a little retreat of these people, and these people come in and you just think, this isn't really about calligraphy. This is about just having time off and to recharge and then get to do something creative, which is so wonderful. And calligraphy, probably just like floristry and gardening, is one of those things that you can just, everything else has to flow out of your head while you do it, and you can just see the life. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it's like. So anyway, I was so excited about having all these other retreats planned, but they've been canceled and postponed and moved around. But I've got one in September. So that should be going ahead, unless there's another pandemic. I don't think there will be. Surely not yet. So yeah, I've got one in September.
Yeah, no, it looks beautiful.
It does look beautiful, really.
And does it include tickets for Bronte Parsonage? I thought.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Have you been to the Bronte Parsonage?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? They actually, off the back of that retreat, they asked me to come to do a class for them, Bronte, and then it was for their I think they have members, or I don't know what they do, but I taught the class at the bed and breakfast, because the bed and breakfast is right in front of the parsonage. So use their tables to teach the class. But then we got a behind the scenes in the archives of like, so we were looking at handwriting of the Brontes. So they had old letters that they had written. Oh my gosh. So I was like, this is so good.
Just gives you like goosebumps, doesn't it? You know, when you see the actual piece of paper that they've written on, and it's just like, oh my goodness.
And their handwriting, and then just how handwriting has just been lost, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Just beautiful handwriting. But
I have letters up in the loft that my great aunts wrote when they were much younger, and the handwriting is just exquisite. It is a little bit of work of art, and it's not something I could ever get rid of. I mean, it's hard to read. I'm not saying you can read every word,
no,
but it just is so beautiful, so beautiful. Again, it's another craft, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly. It's taking time, isn't it? And people, and I think handwriting was one of those things that I remember coming across books that were books for boys, if you can imagine that, calligraphy, because it was like only successful men have good handwriting, and it was so like for the business, if you're going to succeed in this world, you need to write good, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, exactly. And it's just so interesting to think that there was so much pressure put on it in school and stuff like that. And actually I quite like it, you know. It's hard not to. So my 8-year-old, you know, they do joined up writing at school. I mean, like, it's like, that is not how you do a cursive F. Like, this is what it looks like. It's like, no,
this is joined up writing.
Yeah, I was like, that is some sort of weird hybrid that no one on earth, the only people that write like this are 8-year-olds in school. Like, this is not right. And they're teaching you wrong. This is how you write a cursive F. It's either this F or this F. Anyway, I have to let it go.
Turn around to you and go, but Mum, you don't understand. Nobody writes anymore.
Just I'm like, if your teacher has a problem with that, you can come tell him to talk to me. No, anyway.
It's amazing.
No.
So interesting.
Yeah, it's been
anyway,
fascinating.
I am aware that you're really busy, so we'll skip to the question bit.
Okay.
Which, hopefully you know about. Don't worry, they're not scary.
I didn't know about questions.
Oh, didn't you? They're just 5 questions that are just light-hearted to dig into you a little bit more. Okay. And you can do one-word answer or elaborate if you prefer. First question, can you dance?
Yeah. Yeah. My mom's Filipino, so we can hip shake. Wow. It depends on what your idea of dancing is.
Whatever makes you feel good.
Yeah. I do like to shake my hips.
Ooh,
my mom actually taught Zumba for a while as well. And when she first started teaching it, so obviously me and my sister, you know, we can dance, but I don't think we ever knew my mom could dance. And she was like, I'm going to start teaching Zumba. This was years ago. And she started doing it. And she literally, I mean, she's better than me and my sister. Like, it was like her hips were not connected to her body. And I was just like, what? And I did not know that she used to, in the Philippines, because the Philippines culture is very similar to Hawaii, like Pacific Island kind of stuff. She used to teach
hula?
I don't know. Yeah. Like that kind of dancing. And she can actually do that where her hips are like moving and her body isn't. So I was like, oh, that's where I get it from. Definitely not my dad. But yeah, I can dance. I think I can anyway.
Demo later. Okay, we probably know the answer to this, but paper or printing? Maybe we don't know the answer to that.
I don't know. I think I'm enjoying the process of paper making, and I like the outcome of printing.
Ooh,
so I'm enjoying the process of making paper at the moment a lot. I enjoy it a lot.
That's a good answer.
It is a very good answer. What's the most dangerous thing you've ever done?
Dangerous? Well, I mean, there's probably obvious stuff like skydiving.
Have you done that?
I have done that, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, you know what? Thinking about now, when I go back to America, so I grew up in Florida. There are alligators in every body of water in Florida. And I regularly went swimming at lakes and ponds and stuff. And when I've gone back recently, we went canoeing, you know, kind of where I grew up, with the Spanish moss hanging, alligators like peeping out. And I was like, my childhood was actually very dangerous. Because we would just go swimming. So alligators lurk on the shores. That's where they hang out, okay? But I guess maybe growing up in Florida, you just kind of, like Pocahontas or something, just like one with nature. You just kind of know where everything is. But now as an adult and being so removed from it, especially being in England where there's nothing dangerous here.
No
It's like
alligators.
No alligators.
No, it's like going back, I'm like, I'm not going to let my children swim in this water. But my parents were like, go for it all day. So I think just being a child in Florida was dangerous.
Yeah,
Love that
blimey.
answer.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Tea or coffee?
Tea, definitely. Yorkshire tea with
Yorkshire tea.
barista oat milk is my decaf tea also. I'm totally decaffeinated at the moment. So, yeah, I like oat milk in my tea now. I don't know if that's bad.
I have oat milk in my coffee.
Yeah, I like
Oh,
oat milk.
yeah. It's so good, isn't it? Oh, okay.
Froths.
Oh, blimey, I'm the only non-oat milker. I'll have to try it.
Yeah. Convert.
Yes. And finally, what did you have for supper last night?
Nobody can ever remember.
No, it's so funny, isn't it? It's always like, what did I eat?
I actually don't remember.
It made an impression. Did you make it?
Well, this is probably the problem. My husband cooks most of the time. So
Yeah, so does
it
mine.
must have been good. What did you make? Wait, what was yesterday? A Monday?
Monday.
I don't remember. I honestly, I'll have to think about it. I'm like, I cleaned it up. Oh, I know. We had jacket potatoes.
Okay.
Because I cleaned, I remember. We always have jacket potatoes on Monday night because it's very busy on Mondays. So that's like a routine Monday.
Cool.
Fabulous.
Fabulous. Anyway, questions over, so
Okay.
and relax.
Oh, well, thanks for inviting me
thank
on.
you.
No,
Oh,
thank you.
thank
It's been
you.
fascinating.
It's been
It
fascinating. Oh my
really
goodness, we
has.
need to come and see that paper making.
Yes, yes.
We'll all
I
descend on
think
you.
Yeah.
I tell you what,
Well,
this
I'm happy.
podcast has just turned into
Yeah.
a way of us finding where we want to go
Yes.
and learn something next.
It's been
Yeah.
very
What else
expensive.
do we want to learn?
Expensive, that's funny. Well, the thing is that every time I have to rein myself in, but probably similar to you, every time I see something that's interesting and creative, I think I can do that, and then try to also take it on to whatever, and it's just
Yeah.
like, no, just that's
No.
enough.
Stop
I
now.
don't have enough rooms. I don't have enough rooms in the house for that one too.
Brain.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh.
Oh, you've
Well,
been
thank you so much for
amazing.
joining us, and we'll let you get on and do all your 1,000,001 things that you need to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Oh,
It's been
thank you
wonderful.
so
It's been fun.
much. It's been really fascinating. Really fascinating.
Yeah. Well, one day, I hope to have y'all all around to do a paper making session.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Maybe when my studio, when I've got a proper space,
Yeah.
you can come in and have a look. All right.
That would be
Or a nice retreat near the Brontes. That'd be fun.
We could do both, Fiona, both.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, there are 3 spots left on that retreat if you want to.
Okay.
Oh.
Whatever. Look.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Y'all have a good day.
All
right.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Restless Creatives podcast. To ensure you don't miss our next episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Restless Creatives podcast. If you'd prefer to listen rather than watch us, you can catch us on one of your favoured podcast providers. For more sneak peeks and behind the scenes fun, visit our Instagram at the.restlesscreatives or visit our website therestlesscreatives.co.uk.